G'day everyone. Sorry about the birds in the background. Just trying to figure out where and when I'm going to do these lives. Hopefully be getting a permanent situation sorted out soon. But until then, I'll make do with what I got. Just having a look at the monthly today. Mainly because it is the end of the month today, last day of the month, trading-wise for Bitcoin. And it's been a pretty negative month. One thing about this is, we didn't really get all the way back down to the bottom of this previous wick. That's actually a good sign, especially considering we've had increased volume here. I actually take that as a relatively good sign. It's a bit of a, there's still momentum to the downside here, but it's not the worst sort of candle that you could have here. Another follow through to the downside, like a recovery of this. We've almost taken 50% of that. Well, we have actually taken 50% of the volume of that, the body of that candle, and then push back down. So that's not ideal from a monthly perspective. But, this is suggesting there might be a bit of support starting to come through here. Still got to be aware of that value area high there, and the bottom of this channel coming through. So that is probably the biggest concern at the moment. We still haven't closed below that's the 9 EMA there. That's something to really consider. Oh, there's a squirrel running along the power line here. So yeah, that's, to me, momentum is down, BBWP is down. This actually could get a lot nastier. This does seem to be confirmation that we are in a bear market. But in terms of short term and looking at what's going to happen over the next month, we could get a little bit of a relief bounce here. I don't really expect from this point to be making any new all-time highs anytime soon. Now, as I've said previously, this time is different to last time, bull runs and stuff like that. It's not going to be the same. And we are end of cycle as well, so it's going to be choppy over the next 6 months, I think, unless we just go straight to the bottom, which is still on the cards as well. There's no real confirmation whether we are going to find a bounce here or not. So that's what we're trying to have a look at today. Weekly's not looking particularly great there as well. Yeah, just sort of reconnected with the 9 EMA. I think the 13. I can't really see my own screen very well, but that's not great. Hopefully the stream is working okay. Yeah, it looks all right. So yeah, reconnected with that shorter moving average. Moving averages are definitely postured to the downside on the weekly. Momentum is actually on the weekly, is in an area where we could see it bounce. It hasn't crossed or anything at the moment, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. So downside is probably still more likely just looking at this. We do have the 50 EMA on the weekly there as well, 77. It did bounce off that previously. See if it finds some support there. That's kind of where we need to be finding support. We need to be finding support at least at the bottom of this channel here. If not, then it's going to get pretty pretty bleak for a while. But I would be expecting basically the stock market to be confirming bear market / recessionary sort of market, which is certainly on the cards as well. And look, Trump's ruffling some feathers internally and externally at the moment too, so we'll see how that plays out. Onto the daily, it still seems to be wanting to continue to the downside. The thing with downside plays in Bitcoin is they are tricky. It's not that often you actually get 5-6 days in a row to the downside. Stopped at 4 there. We had 5 there. It's a pretty rare thing. But at the same time, this could flash crash down to this level as well. So I'm looking at this. We're kind of in no man's land at the moment for a reversal here. There does seem to be a bit of support coming in, and I'll show you some of the volume charts in a sec, the volume leaders charts that kind of suggest we are starting to get some interest again. The thing that concerns me is, we're getting towards the bottom of this volume node here, and that's your next stop down here somewhere, down into the low 70s. So, and the measured move would suggest we're going to come back down to the bottom of this channel as well. I'm still leaning towards that. On the daily, though, it might still be a bit choppy. So we might actually make a play back up into the top of this channel. Obviously, the bear flag is broken. We did get a decent confirmation on the 1 hour of that bear flag break. So it did pull back up, confirm, moved away. So that would suggest more downside is likely. But there is a little bit of volume coming through on the drop here. So I still think it's probably a grind down. There will be some flashes where it drops pretty hard, like this sort of thing here, if we do get to those points, just because once it starts getting that liquidity, it continues to drop pretty quickly. So first target, like there was a lot of liquidity around this 81, 82 level as well. So sort of coming into that area there, I did expect a little bit of a bounce. But as I mentioned to a few guys, that bounce wasn't necessarily likely to last very long. And one thing I am looking at the moment when I'm looking at these things on shorter time frames is just using the Bollinger Band principles. So the 25 and 1 Bollinger Bands, but using them on longer time frames. So even though I'm on the 15-minute chart here, I'll be looking for breakdowns of like the 4 hour or the 1 hour Bollinger Band. Typically I start with the 1 hour. Once we're sort of breaking outside the 1 hour, then I'll have a look at the 4 hour and see where we are. Same with pullbacks. Typically you're looking for pullbacks into the 1 hour Bollinger Band. And this isn't my script either. You can just get this from wherever. So you're initially looking for pullbacks into the 1 hour. If the 1 hour confirms and sort of stays inside, then you're looking for moves either into the middle of the 1 hour or into the opposite side. And typically, if you are finding a little bit of a base and a relief rally, you're going to be looking at the 4 hour bottom of the Bollinger Band. And this happens with the top side as well. It's not just for drops. So as you can see, it sort of came in and basically rejected that 4 hour Bollinger Band. So that's typically what I'm looking for. I'm working on some stuff down here at the moment, which is looking promising. I just got to build out the script a little bit more. just trying to get the logic into it is tricky with the way I want it to work. But so yeah, at the moment we are below the bottom of the 4-hour Bollinger Band, and that's typically, you want to wait for confirmation inside there, but at the same time we haven't really been confirming with strength above the 13 EMA on the 15-minute and particularly the 1 hour. And especially when we're below the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA, you've got to be sort of downside biased, but you can look for potential upside moves as well. And typically they'll start on the 15-minute, but you want to see some sort of setup on the hourly as well. So it looks like it wants to kind of try and break back inside this 1 hour Bollinger Band at the moment. There was a vector candle recovery in this wick here, but it's kind of left its own vector candle as well. It's hard to say. We've got 48 minutes left in this candle, so I'm not going to pay too much attention to that. But this could just be a recovery of that wick, and then we try and move back to the upside. But while ever we're sort of below this 13 EMA here, that's still sort of bullish bias for me. Okay, and when you are below sort of the 4-hour Bollinger Bands, any sort of break above, you've got to be careful about the duration that you're going to play that, because everything's still postured to the downside. All your moving averages are still well and truly downside bias. So it's more of a take profit thing. So that was a good take profit level there, but not necessarily a go bullish. All right. So at the moment, charts are kind of suggesting we may actually be trying to base here. It's just going to depend whether we can break back into this 1 hour EMA, which will break us into the 4 hour. Sorry. The 13 EMA on the 1 hour would also, at where we are at the moment, break us into the 4 hour Bollinger Band. So, and that could be something decent. The other thing was, I don't have the Bollinger Bands on the daily chart. Let's just go to the daily here. Actually, sorry, it's a little hard to see the chart at the moment. So we are actually just bouncing off the bottom of the daily Bollinger Band as well. So that's something to keep in mind. They can be really key levels. Obviously, we break outside the daily Bollingers and it can get pretty nasty. Okay, that happened back here. And those sort of breaks tend to be pretty bearish. So what we want to see, and look, as you can see, the daily Bollinger Band to the upside was resistance as well. So just keep that in mind. It's all those things you're looking for confluence. And I'm trying to replicate these sort of confluences without actually doing a longer time frame lookup in TradingView, because you can't backtest it properly if you do that. So it's kind of, that's where the trickiness is at the moment. All right, so that's where I am at. Reset that. So yeah, for the time being, fairly biased to the downside. BTC USD long, so they did go flat for a little bit there on the pump, and no one really sold, which surprised me a little bit. I actually thought that would drop back a little bit as we were coming up here, but they have not done that. So, and they're going back into accumulation again. So that's a good sign for us that this may actually be a time for a relief rally soon. But as we know, these guys can keep buying on the dips if we keep dipping. So, all right, let's have a look here. So daily momentum is actually, that's the 1 hour. Sorry. Yeah, daily momentum's still squarely to the downside. The concerning thing here is BBWP is actually above the signal line there. If we get another flash, it could actually go quite quickly that we get expansion here of the daily BBWP. That could signal when we're getting close to the bottom. So if that happens and we're hitting this sort of area down here around the 72-ish, 70-ish, and we start to reconfirm back above the 1 hour 13 EMA, then I'm actually going to be closing out shorts and looking for longs again. So, all right. The other interesting thing for me, so total versus stable coins, it's actually finding some support on this trend line here, which was quite a bit of resistance. So it makes sense that it's finding support here. I don't know whether that'll hold, but we've clearly retested multiple times this bull market support line, and we are starting to move away from that. So at this stage, it is bear market confirmed. So I am expecting a bit more downside. And BBWP is expanding, momentum's to the downside on the daily. So this could get pretty major. There is another trend line here for support. We could very well hit that at some stage during this bear market. I don't know how long it will be to hit that, but yeah, we could get to it pretty quick. So just be aware of that. There isn't a lot of support levels that I like until that point. There is potentially a bounce level here off this wick at about the 11, which, let's put that horizontal line on the charts there. Where's my favorites? Yeah. That is potentially support. It's a little bit below that wick, but that's probably the sort of region that I'd be looking at for support on total versus stable coins. And that would make sense to pull. I don't think we're going, that's a massive drop to get back down into this trend line. I think that'll be something I'll be looking at for confirmation that we've reached the bottom of the bear market. But in terms of bounces, it would make a lot of sense for this to be bouncing potentially even a little bit sooner than that, potentially around that first week there. So going to be looking somewhere in that region for bounces on this. Before that, there isn't a hell of a lot, unless it just comes down, retests this level here, and then goes to the upside. Even still, we're that close to this bull market support line that we could still reclaim that and go bull. I don't think it's going to happen. It hasn't really worked that way in the past, just given where everything's at. But obviously, never say never in trading. It's just playing likelihoods and be ready for both directions. LTC's kind of looks like it wants to try and find a bottom here too, but this wick here wouldn't be a bad level for pullback to finish. Sol as well hasn't pulled back necessarily as much as Bitcoin, so these look like they're closer to sort of basing than what Bitcoin itself is. But again, you got to be concerned this BBWP doesn't expand further as we're still, downward momentum Ethereum's hitting this pretty good level. It could still come back down into 1500 just for that value area low, but it's kind of a make or break level here for Ethereum at the moment. If Ethereum pushes through this level, I would actually expect the rest of the market to come down as well, and you'd be looking at that, but it's probably going to be governed by what Bitcoin does. We have had a gap down today as well on CME. So CME actually looks the nastiest of most of the charts, because not just because of that gap. That gap's actually a bullish gap, but it's just BBWP is resetting at the moment. It hasn't started to expand yet. Really keep an eye on where the momentum is when BBWP expands on CME, because that will give you a pretty good idea which way we're going. Just going to have a quick look at the NASDAQ. Obviously, Friday was a pretty negative day on the NAS, and we did pull up. We retested these trend lines and we've pulled away. That's not looking great. The fact we haven't broken these lows yet is a saving grace, but that's a pretty negative setup there. So I'm kind of expecting a bit lower here. And if we do break lower, that could get really nasty. Yeah, there's a support level there at 18,400 and 50-ish. This level here, so 17,400, is probably one that I like a little bit better than that. I just don't really think that if we're breaking these levels that's where it's going to stop, because there's too many other issues at play here at the moment. Yeah, similar on the Qs. That vector candle there is looking very attractive, which would pretty much put us into a bear market. Not necessarily saying it's going to happen. That'd be 22%. So that's something to keep an eye out. As I was talking last week, sort of moves up into these moving averages and bounces away from them, like particularly that 200 moving average on the daily. Breaks below this level, and like proper breaks below, typically that will lead into a bear market, if not recession. Okay. They're the nasty ones when you start to get resistance without reclaiming it pretty quickly. So minis are actually just at that low already. This could be a target box. It's going to have to find some support here pretty quickly, I think. Otherwise, we'll just flush straight through that. So be looking for proper confirmation of a bounce before getting too bullish here, I think is the message. Equal weight, that's not a bad level for equal weight. Again, found some resistance at a pretty key level. Break below this level here is going to be pretty interesting. So if equal weight's confirming a breakdown as well, then that won't be great. Just bouncing between these two key levels at the moment, but again, rejecting off some pretty major levels on S&P 500. Again, there is potentially some support here, but at the moment, BBWP is pretty high and momentum is very much to the downside on the daily. So it's gonna be like stopping a freight train here. Again, RSP, so equal weight S&P 500 is looking okay as well for a bounce here, but I No, I don't know that'll hold. We'd need to see some pretty decent upside moves at the moment. And we haven't had really, since that spike down, we haven't had massive volumes here buying up. So you want to see a little bit of volume come through as well. IWM, I would like to see IWM come back down into this area a little bit more. That would freak a lot of people out too. So this is the thing that the market can do. It can swipe these lows, get rid of a lot of longs out of the system, get rid of some more leverage, draw in a lot more shorts, and then go long. And the other day I was mentioning that people were going mass long, huge amounts of calls on the options when this started to bounce, and that really concerns me when they shift from so bearish to so bullish. Typically that's not just going to go straight up from there. So XLI still hasn't really broken down below this channel too much. So XLI back into this region here is still not that bad. That's probably where we're going to get the first decent relief rally, I think. So I'm leaning, based on these charts, I'm leaning to a little bit more down below this level here, and potentially a bounce on XLI around the 125, 126 maybe. If we get a bounce there, we could actually see back up into the 140s. But wait, see what happens when it gets down to there. XLY, XLP, obviously it hit a key resistance level as well, and it is pulling back. Still back below this trend line here, which we'll see what happens, but yeah, momentum's pretty squarely to the downside on that as well. XLP versus SPY, this is probably the biggest concern at the moment, in that this may actually be the big break, or at least the start of the recession / depression that we're going into, because we have broken above. We did drop back below this, and I thought it might want to come back into this level, but it has basically just reconfirmed that this trend line is support for the time being, and momentum to the upside on this generally will mean stocks will come down more. Now, this is an interesting level here because it is likely to provide resistance to XLY, XLP, and that would suggest, okay, we're going to go a little bit lower than the current low on the markets. And if this rejects off this level here, then markets will get a relief bounce, and we'll be talking about, okay, does this come back down all the way into here, or does it actually find some support here and then we go further down? This is a pretty dire chart at the moment, because that is the major trend line that typically is support for bull runs as well on the regular stock market. Equal weight, XLY versus XLP. It's actually breaking a new low there. That's not a great sign. So it would also be an agreement that we should be coming down a little bit lower before getting a relief bounce. RSP, yeah, same sort of deal there. So equal weight, XLY versus XLP did pull back into key level, and it's now broken back above that bigger trend line. So this is another one to keep an eye on. As long as this is going up and looks like it's got key levels above that it wants to get into, then we've got to be bearish on the market overall. That's an interesting rejection of the 200 EMA on the equal weight there as well. Consumer discretionary. I mean, that's suggesting there's more downside to come in markets. If consumer discretionary is going to get slammed, then market's going to get slammed. There is a gap fill here on it too, down into the 46 area. So that gap fill there is potentially going to be a good spot for a bounce as well. Again, bounces, in the way I'm looking at the charts at the moment, they will find resistance at key levels. KRE, regional banking, is not looking too bad, but again, rejection of that 200 EMA, rejection of a previous sort of support level. We do have this trend line here, but I suspect that's going to be broken. I actually think this might come back down into this lower trend line here, which would again be a pretty decent area for a little relief bounce. Financials in general, yeah, it's coming with the market. This is going to look interesting in terms of head and shoulders pattern once it comes back down into the 200 EMA here, which I think it is likely to do that. If we're breaking that head and shoulders on the financials, then that's another thing that would confirm it's going to get nasty. The other really bad sign for markets is ITB retesting this breakdown level, retesting the trend line from the bottom side. That's not a good sign. So if the housing market is in trouble, construction is in trouble, typically, and like this has already been smacked down, that's not a good sign for markets. If we're basically, what you're looking for is that break of that previous low on ITB in particular. Home builders is still got a little bit of potential there, but again, it's sort of confirming below key levels and still haven't broken that trend line there either. So down into this level and then a bounce would be interesting. That could suggest support. That could align with the market finding a bottom, or a temporary bottom at least. I have to wait and see. SMH, yeah, semiconductors I do expect to come in, do the vector candle recovery here. Should be a reasonable level for a bounce. If we're breaking below that level, then again, that's a big lookout below kind of level. And interesting that it's at 200 there. Nice round number. Markets do tend to gravitate towards them. Not great on DJI versus gold as well. This is a pretty key level for it though. DJT versus gold. It's, yeah, I mean, as we said, the break of that level pretty well confirmed that we were going down on markets. Yeah, DJT is looking pretty gross. DJI, same sort of thing. That's not what you want to be seeing. DJI could come back quite a bit more than where it's at. Global liquidity too is still struggling. It looks like it wants to break this trend line to the downside. So in general, liquidity's not there. Big guys don't seem to be really coming back in a big way compared to what they were when they were getting out across the top. VIX bounced off that trend line. That was a good trend line there. So at the moment, VIX is still very much postured to the upside, so that can change in a heartbeat, but it's just one to keep in mind. So the skew also pulled back on Friday. No real surprise there. It's a long way from looking healthy, so pullbacks on the skew into a new low here would again suggest that things aren't going to look great. VIX 1 day So the fact that it's spiking so hard and it hasn't really hit a key level, I'd actually be interested in this if we did get into this trend line. That would be of interest, but we could also spike as high as this here before we find, like somewhere in this region here, before we find a low on markets. So these things are definitely ones to look at for turnarounds, especially once you're getting close to key levels. Actually, I'll just look at the advanced decline line because that gave us a pretty good idea of the bounce point previously. Let's look at this. Okay, lower high on advanced decline line. That's not great. That is potentially going to suggest a rollover of the advanced decline line. And if that starts going south on us, then yeah, not great. But yeah, it's still postured to the downside as well. Breaking these levels here would suggest we're going a little bit deeper. Let's have a look at, so DAX. I would expect DAX to break that level. Oops. Hang Seng broken below that trend line and confirmed it. So yeah, I'd be expecting this one to pull back potentially into this 21,383 sort of level. UK 100 again breaking down below another key trend line. Not looking great. I think we can get rid of that now. I think it'll come back into here, at least into that 200 EMA. That'd be a pretty good confluence area. Japanese, yeah, Japanese market. That is a nasty break on the Japanese market. Like, look out for little rallies into vector candle recoveries, but that's nasty. You know, last time we broke this level, there was follow through a couple of times. So I would actually expect Japanese market to come back pretty hard too. This is looking like it's actually the major breakdown, not necessarily the warning shot now. Just given global markets are sort of aligned that way as well. TLT, yeah, it looks like accumulation happening at the moment. Looks set to break to the upside too, momentum and BBWP wise. High yield junk breaking out of this wedge again. It failed to break out last time. I suspect this one is going to actually follow through. So target on high yield junk is actually down into this vector candle, I think, just based on this distribution across the top. Let's go with, oops. The magnet can be good sometimes, and sometimes it can be ordinary. So just that measured move sort of thing as well, back down into this vector. That's, to me, if that actually plays out, if we confirm the breakdown of high yield, that is going to suggest another decent move down on markets. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah, LQD, that, I mean, it's postured to the downside. We haven't broken this level yet, but it's, yeah, it's moving. This obviously didn't play out. Didn't even get a bounce into this sort of previous level as much as I thought it might. So that's interesting, but at the moment, all we really need to know is this is momentum to the downside. 3-month versus 10-year looks like it wants to invert again. 2-year yields pulling back a little. People are just moving into TLT, I think. Chinese 2-year. Yeah, it's kind of in an interesting area. If that breaks down, then there's a general flight to safety across the board. I was going to have a quick look at this. Yeah. I'll get to that another time. But copper actually reached a bit higher than I thought it would. So probably a bit of a fake out at the moment above that level. Yeah, it's actually finding some support still. If copper goes on a run, it's a counter signal to what I would think. Gold actually retested the breakout and is breaking out more. That's a little surprising to me, but gold's going to be an interesting one during any sort of market crashes. Once the market panics, gold will come down, but in general, gold's probably still going to be strong over the next 5 years. 5 years might be a bit much. Let's say the next year at least. Silver versus gold is still in an accumulation kind of area. That's really weird. I haven't really got confirmation of a breakout here on silver yet. It could go, like if silver confirms above these highs here of around 34.8, then it could go pretty hard, but it's a weird one at the moment. US oil, good resistance level there. It is breaking down from that. We'll see if it finds some support on the value area low. If it doesn't, then I actually expect it to break below this on the next try. So I will be getting out of my oil trade, I believe. Yeah, confirm back above this Aussie dollar wise, but yeah, I might get out of that today, I think. Dixie. Yeah, looks like it wants to move further to the downside. Dixie could easily come back into 101, 102 sort of area. Well, sorry, 101.5 to 101. Yeah. I'm not going to worry too much about them. I'll just have a quick look at the euro. Yeah. Euro target of 111, 112 on euro, I think, is reasonable. Could even keep going, actually, if the US dollar completely shits the bed. Momentum is the downside on global liquidity as well. We just haven't broken out of this range. I want to see a break either way. If we break to the downside, it's going to look pretty nasty in general, but actually, I think we'll find a base somewhere around here and we could actually get a decent move to the upside for that relief rally. We still haven't had a major trigger yet, though. So, and I'm still interested in Wednesday to see whether we get a bigger bounce on Wednesday. Just, basically a buy the event, sell the news, buy the event type market into the tariffs. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially if we're hitting key support levels around that point. Markets in general pretty red. See, we've got these trend line levels below and key support levels below on a lot of charts that could prove useful come Wednesday. And then everyone will be like, oh, this is just a correction, just back into key moving averages on the monthly and stuff like that. We'll move up, and then some stage later in the year, we could get that bigger drop. So it's looking nasty. It's just we're coming into some really key periods. All right, so charts wise, I think that pretty well covers it. I'll just have a quick look at Bitcoin before we move on. Yeah, still moving down on the daily here. Middle of this channel, I think, is going to be of particular interest. Looks like it wants to reach for that. So yeah, keep them on the charts. That's an interesting one. Yeah, it looks like we're going to break back below here and back into that area. Would see us pretty well at the bottom of that channel, I think, for Bitcoin. Let's go with... So liquidity levels, pretty decent one here at 8,000. That could provide a bit of support, but let's face it, I think it's going further than that. Just go out, go quickly to the 1 month. Come on. Yeah, back into here, into Wednesday would be a very interesting play. Breaking through that could get pretty nasty. Like, we could pick up this 75k level and bounce there, but there's not a lot there. I mean, there's millions of dollars, but it's compared to this as a beacon of $15 million. It's interesting. So we've pretty much got two plays at the moment. One, the market's flush a little bit more for a little bit longer, and then we find a key level and we bounce. Could be around that 67k for Bitcoin. Or we just pull back into these levels, maybe very close to that previous low, maybe a little bit further, down into 75, 74 even, just swipe the lows, and then we actually have a relief rally. Two scenarios that I'm looking at the moment. I'm expecting it to at least take these levels. Okay, doesn't actually look like there's a lot of reason for it to bounce until it gets down to at least 70. If we're breaking this previous low here, I think that will be a pretty quick crash from there. So it could get nasty. It could very quickly go in and wick into this 67 level. It's definitely something to keep in mind. As I pointed out in the Discord, and sorry I haven't been doing the videos, just finding the time and place over here is tricky. But futures volume, CBD is down, but also we had a pretty big sell-off in spot CBD. So spot CBD is still trending to the downside. Not really expecting a low to form until we actually see spot start to pick back up. So basically, you just want buying volume to overpower the selling volume. That's effectively what CBD is showing you. Look, we did have a decent run up on it through the bottoms here. So that was suggesting there was some interest in it, but we've basically sold off more than that now. So we're back to square one. We're back to getting back down through those lows effectively, based on what I'm looking at the moment. Bitcoin is still cheaper than what it can be mined for. Well, on average, there will be miners that are in profit still. This is an interesting one. I haven't seen a read of 0.8 on the smart money bullish sentiment for the whole time I've been looking at it, which is well over a year. Dumb money's obviously still not happy with the situation, so that's a good thing. But yeah, that smart money being that bullish, we can still get moves down below this previous low here, but that is starting to be of interest that we could be finding a bottom pretty soon. Interesting one here on IBIT, so the BlackRock ETF seems to be trying to defend this level. I don't know that is what will actually happen. We'll wait and see once it starts trading. Just looking at the last 30 days, there was a fair bit of volume across the top here, and we have gap down again. That could just be a sell, like one of these guys selling. Typically, they're buying those sort of key levels, though, so or at least DCAing in. So I do expect there to be a bit of support soon for IBIT, and flows have been reasonable back into ETFs over this period, so see what happens. But generally, yeah, the 2x long fund's not getting anything massive coming into it on Coinbase. A little bit of trading along the bottom, but decent trade there at the bottom on Coinbase regular. So we'll see where that leads today. It does seem to be a bit of a defended level. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Mara actually getting a decent trade at this level, and we've pulled back into that. And it's a, what do they call it? A trade cluster level. So pulling down, we could actually find a bottom before the market opens or soon after the market opens, and that would be a good level for this to bounce because it is a defended level. Some big trades coming through here for Marathon. XLP, so consumer staples, could actually roll over here as well. So if that rolls over, I would actually expect the market to bounce. Now, it might just not drop as hard as the rest. Interesting cluster level here for consumer discretionary as well. So there are some signs here that the market is getting some interest. They're not huge trades, but we are getting a lot of clusters. So that is a positive sign, but I just don't know whether it's enough at the moment. There's, big trades here at the top. We haven't really followed through from that on the energy sector. Minerals and mining's coming into a key level. That is actually a reasonable level for a bounce. If we get one, I'd like to see a big trade come through there. This is on the monthly too, most of these charts. Those birds are pretty loud this morning. Again, this one's probably looking the worst, really. Financial sector, you really want to see one of these trades come through at the bottom, not necessarily at the top before we move down. So financials is suggesting there could be some further weakness. Utilities, kind of all over the shop. Utilities could have more in it to the upside. So again, defensive play would suggest potentially more downside in the markets. Tech sector is looking pretty bad as well. So it doesn't necessarily look like we found a bottom on that one yet. So in general, yeah, there's some defended levels, but I just don't know that we've seen enough here to say we're at a bottom. I'll just move out to 90 days on IBIT. Let's do it. All right. Yeah, so still nothing coming through that compares to this. These guys can buy the dip and just keep buying the dip with pretty big trades. So, and they could be selling the rip too. So, yeah, I still think a little bit more downside this week, but around Wednesday, I'm going to be looking for potential bottoms in particular. All right, catch you later.